Hey guys, I am Kelly and this is my husband Kevin. And today on our Awkward Travel Chat, we are going to be talking about our American Southwest road trip that we took in 2018.
Yep, this is episode 7, and we did a 10-day road trip leaving from our home in Los Angeles, and it was really awesome.
Yeah, that was a good trip. We did it in late June of 2018. Which is very hot.
Yeah, it probably would have been better to do it a little later, but...
So it was pretty much mostly in southern Utah and Arizona. We drove from LA up through Las Vegas and then to St. George, Utah, and then we went over to Zion National Park the first day.
Yeah, that was our main draw. We wanted to hit as many national parks as possible on this road trip. So Zion was one that we hadn't really been to yet. We're annual pass holders, so we have access to all the national parks that we can go to in 1 year when you have that pass.
So yeah, Zion's awesome if you've never been before. It's definitely worth the trip. It's only like maybe 3 hours outside of Vegas. If you go from Vegas, you'll come to I guess St. George, Utah, and then you'll go over and you'll hit Hurricane, Utah. It's spelled like hurricane, but it's actually hurricane. And that it's about a half-hour drive further from there to go into the park, and that's where we stayed the first night. You can stay in the park, or there's a town just outside the entrance to the park called Springdale, but it's a lot more expensive to stay there, obviously, because it's right there. But recently, Hurricane has had kind of a big boom of hotels and stuff, basically, because it's right next to Zion, so
Yep.
They have a lot of new hotels.
Yeah, we did a little mix of camping and staying in hotels. Like we said, it was really hot, so some of the spots that we went to, the temperature was up towards 100 degrees, so we kind of played that to each situation to decide whether we wanted to stay in a hotel or if we wanted to do some camping. But Zion was really incredible. Like I said, it was my first time there. So we got into the park. You couldn't drive yourself through the whole park. You had to take a shuttle system, which I'm pretty sure they do that all summer long. I think in the winter you can drive yourself. That was pretty cool to be able to get off at all the different stops and do some hikes around the valley floor. And we were there for 2 days, right?
Yeah, we spent 2 nights. I have a blog post on this. If you're watching on live, go to theawkwardtourist.com. You can see that guide to Zion. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll go ahead and link that blog post down below. I also have one for this whole road trip, so you have 2 of those to kind of give you lots of info. But Zion is awesome. It is so gorgeous. Definitely recommend it if you're in the southern Utah area. I would say it's one of Utah's top national parks.
Yeah.
Definitely worth a visit.
It's really close to Las Vegas, like she said, and yeah, it's a really beautiful valley. We did one big hike. There's quite a few. You can do Angel's Landing. Is that what it's called?
Landing, yeah.
Angel's Landing, which is a pretty picturesque view, and it's kind of a crazy last little bit where you get up on the saddle of this really big rocky peak in the middle of the park. But we decided to do the Narrows, which is at the far end of the National Park Canyon, and it's this river that you walk right up the river, and you can go miles and miles, and there's just these huge cliffs on each side, and it's just every turn is super picturesque and really beautiful. I'm sure you've seen pictures of it on Instagram or wherever else, but
yeah, there's basically on that hike, there's basically no banks of the rivers. It's the Virgin River, and it just carved this canyon, and it's just river and red cliffs, which is really cool. So you have to kind of time it out depending on what time of year you're going to go. The water was low when we were there in summer, but if you go in spring, it can be like you can be hiking in water that's chest deep.
Yeah, and it's super cold all year round, so that's something to definitely be aware of. You could get like these special boots in town that were like waterproof, and they give you like hiking sticks for a couple bucks to rent for the day, and a lot of people had those, which would make it a little easier. We just went our own route with trekking poles, which were, I think, pretty essential. You could do it without it, but it really helped because you're walking through the river and on slippery rocks the whole time.
Yeah, I would definitely say they were worth it.
Yeah, but it was a great hike. Gonna go back and do the subway next time.
Which part is the subway?
The subway, you can go to the far end. The way that we did it, we went to the end of the road and hiked up the river and then came back down, and that's through the Narrows. The subway is a section of the Narrows that's like 10 miles up the river, and you can actually hike in from that side and walk down through, and it's supposed to be really beautiful.
Yeah, Zion is one of my favorite places to go. I think just it's so easy to get to from Vegas, and it's like you can get there in a day from LA fairly easily. It's a long day, but
Yep.
Yeah.
Our destination after Zion was to go to Lake Powell and Page, Arizona. But while we were in Zion, we decided last minute to take an extra day and go to Bryce Canyon, just because we had that annual Explorer Pass for the national parks, and it was only, I think, 3 hours away from Zion. Is that right?
Bryce Canyon? No, it was much closer than that.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
But
it's not far.
It was in the opposite direction of where we were going, so
Yeah.
I think it was like 3 hours out of the way. 'Cause
Oh,
we had
okay.
to come and then go back
Yeah,
down.
so it was like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
But I was blown away by Bryce. It's at a much higher elevation, so even when we went in the middle of June, it was a lot more comfortable of a temperature, and that was really cool. Bryce is another canyon. The whole Utah canyon or national park system is just really incredible, and they're all pretty different too. So that was a big draw of this road trip. But Bryce Canyon has these features called hoodoos, which are like spires that have formed due to erosion, and they're just really unique, and the hiking trails around there are super beautiful.
Yeah, it's like you don't know that the canyon's there until you're basically on top of it. You kind of just walk up, and then the landscape has eroded in such a way that there's all these spiky. It's unique. It's very, very unique. It's like mountainous kind of terrain with pine trees and kind of like you see in like normal mountainous terrain, and then you get to it and there's just like all these orange spires.
Yeah,
it's so cool.
All the rocks are like an orange and red, and even sometimes you'll see some purples in there. They're really, really beautiful colors.
Yeah, Bryce Canyon is one of the smaller parks, I think, national parks in Utah, but we loved it. Like we only visited for a couple hours because we were so close and we had never been there before, so
yeah.
We decided to go check it out, even though it was in the opposite direction of where we were going. So it added like probably a good 4 or 5 hours onto our trip.
Yeah.
Onto our day.
It was worth it though. And one thing that we saw on the way to Bryce was, I think I wrote it down, it was called Red Canyon. That's the Thunder Mountain area.
Oh, yeah.
So we were driving along, and it was in the national forest, but it wasn't part of the national park. It was probably a half hour before you actually get to Bryce. But there's just this little pull-off with a little visitor center and some hiking trails. And if you've ever been to Disneyland, and I think they have one at Disney World too, if you go on Thunder Mountain and you see those crazy like big spires, that's actually based off of this area in Utah.
Yeah, that's a real place. And
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
so
and
I was like, it's just like Disneyland.
yeah, and we were looking and we were like, wow, this place is actually like that trail over there is called Thunder Mountain, and then we're like, wait a minute, and we did a little research on Google and found out that that's actually where Disney got the idea to make that ride, was from this one area, and it looks just like Thunder Mountain.
Yeah, it was super cool.
It was really neat to see just an actual real life version of what Disney portrays in their theme parks.
Yeah, it was unexpected for sure.
Yeah, so we stopped and hiked around there for a little bit.
Yeah. So then that night we stayed in Kanab, Utah, which is in very southern Utah between Zion and Lake Powell. But Kanab is actually a really funky town, and it has a lot of hikes and a lot of cool places around there. It's very close to Lake Powell, but also that's where you go to get the wave.
Yeah, somewhere near there. We haven't done that yet. If you don't know the wave, and you're watching this on YouTube, we'll put a little image of the wave in there, but it's this really crazy rock formation that the lottery system to get a permit to go there is like insanely difficult. I think they allow 10 or 15 people a day, and it's, booked years in advance, and you can show up and hopefully get one of those spots that they offer on the day of, but it's really hit or miss to go see.
Yeah, Kanab is basically surrounded by Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, which, I mean, it could be Utah's sixth national park?
5 or 6.
Anyway, it could be a national park. It's so amazing. And it's a huge, huge area. And we went and saw this this place that had these huge like hills with different stripes of color. That was really cool. And then you can do all kinds of hikes out of Kanab. We haven't really spent that much time there.
We did go to Pink Coral Sand Dunes. I think that's a state park. But there's...
Yeah, it's a Utah state park.
Yeah, there's an area right outside of Kanab, just to the north, that there's all these sand dunes, and they're all a hue of pink due to all the red rock that's around. So we went there, and that's a big like off-road dirt bike, 4-wheel drive area. But we went and hiked around there a little bit. Mind you, it was still almost 100 degrees, so we didn't do much hiking. I remember trying to run across the sand, and it was burning our feet, so there was definitely a bit of a struggle. If you do this road trip, maybe don't do it in the middle of June like we did. That might not be the best idea, but
I like the heat.
It was still really fun, though. And then I think what Kelly's talking about is the Pariah town site, right?
Yeah.
So we were drawn... this is before you get to Lake Powell, to this ghost town called Pariah. And so we drove down this dirt road that was in bad condition. It was washboard the whole way, so it was really slow going, and got out to where this little ghost town site used to be. Turns out it isn't there anymore, but the highlight of the whole area was these just rainbow colored mountains that just had gold and purple and red and orange, and it was like...
We posted a few photos on Instagram, but it didn't really do the place justice. I think we'll have to go back and take more photos.
Yeah, it was just amazing.
Yeah, southern Utah is just unreal. It really is, like, unlike any other place on earth.
Yeah.
It's so funny to me because all these people now are like, oh, we're getting vans and we're going to travel around the U.S. because of coronavirus. And they're like, we haven't really explored the U.S. before, so we're excited. And I'm like, the U.S. is one of the most beautiful countries in the world.
Especially the American Southwest just has a ton of stuff to offer. We finally made our way to Lake Powell. I'm going to probably push this over to Kelly because she's been going to Lake Powell for her whole life with her family and different trips.
Lake Powell is a man-made lake in southern Utah, and it just barely goes over the border into Arizona, which is where Page is, which is pretty much where you're going to base yourself if you're going to Lake Powell. And my family's we've been taking road trips there since I was little. They would take their little speedboat there, and it makes me so sad because it's so low now, the water levels, just because droughts and, I don't know, changing climates and everything, but it's a really, really unique lake. It flooded Glen Canyon, so there's a big dam there called the Glen Canyon Dam, and they built it and it flooded Glen Canyon, which is like, I don't really know how to describe it. It has so many fingers and so many like canyons that you can go into. It's not like a straightforward reservoir lake. Like it has, you can take a boat and go into just little tiny fingers. To put it in perspective, the lake has more shoreline than the entire eastern coast of the United States.
Yeah, so there's just tons of little areas that you can get to, and it's just this beautiful rock. Houseboats are really big there, speedboats are really big. It's definitely a water-centric town. But other than that big reservoir, the big dam, Lake Powell, there really isn't a lot of water. So it's just a very barren desert. So it's a really unique contrast of the two. Just south of town, you can go see Horseshoe Bend, which is it the Colorado River?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the Colorado River feeds out on the other side of the dam and continues on.
One of the many times the Colorado's dammed up.
Yeah. And there's this really beautiful picture spot that's Horseshoe Bend, and it's just this big bend that comes around.
You've seen it on Instagram.
Yeah, it's a very, very popular Southwest photo. So we wanted to go there and take some photos, which we did. But we actually had a little bit of trouble with the time change.
Yeah, it's just over the border, so it's just into Arizona, And Arizona doesn't observe daylight savings time, so it was on a different time zone than Utah. So like literally you go in and boom, it's an hour. It's an hour later.
I don't know. It was an hour off of whenever we were there though, and it was, like I said earlier, it was like 100 degrees during the day, so you really didn't want to do much during the day. So we had actually gone out in the morning, and I think we did a quick little hike, but we went back to the room to kind of cool off before going out and shooting sunset photos, and we showed up an hour late.
Yeah,
which is a huge bummer.
It was almost dark because I don't know what, I looked up the time of sunset, but it was actually the time in Utah instead of in Arizona where we were, even though it was only like literally 2 miles away. So we showed up an hour too late. We still got some good photos. But it was like, I don't think it's sketchy now. They were doing some construction, but you could go right up to the edge and it's really high.
Yeah, and it's super windy and really crazy. Now they've built a more dedicated parking area. You used to have to walk in like a half a mile to get to it, and there wasn't any guardrail or anything like that. It was just sheer drop. Yeah. But now they've made it and kind of catered it more to tourism.
Yeah,
so
it was super windy, and I was wearing a dress and a hat, and I was terrified of getting near the edge because I was afraid like the hat would go flying and I would, go to reach for it, and it was not. I didn't like it. It was really pretty, but I didn't like being up that high and it being so windy. So.
The other thing that the Page area, Lake Powell area, is really known for is its slot canyons. I would say the most famous slot canyon in the United States is Antelope Valley.
Antelope Canyon.
Thank you, Antelope Canyon, Antelope Valley. That's a really beautiful spot. I think that in the last few years, though, it's really been overdone with tourism. They just put too many people in through it, so you really can't get that kind of authentic experience that you'll see in all those Instagram photos.
Yeah, it's on Navajo Nation land.
Yep.
So you have to go through the nation to get your tours and everything. You have to go with guided tours.
Yep.
And it gets really super
crowded, and it was pretty expensive. We had gone a couple years earlier than this trip. I'm going to say it was maybe like 4 years earlier.
Yeah, I think so.
Or so, give or take. And then we came back on the Southwest road trip, and in that 4-year time, it had just changed so much. There was a lot more structure. The prices had skyrocketed. There was a ton of more people that were there. So it's definitely a touristy spot, and I think there's better slot canyons that you could go to now if you want a more authentic experience. But the beauty of this slot canyon is just unrivaled.
It's still worth it. It was hard to get photos without anybody in them, but it's still worth it to see them. I would just recommend not going in peak season.
Yeah.
Like go in maybe late fall would be good. Spring is a little iffy because of the weather, the rain and stuff.
Yeah, that's something. If you don't really know what a slot canyon is, it's a very, very narrow, pretty deep canyon where sometimes you will have to turn sideways to walk through. So it's really, really tight, and the way it's all formed is from runoff in the spring. And so it can be really dangerous if there's a thunderstorm that's miles away, nowhere near you, but the water flash floods down through there. You get caught in this slot canyon, and there's nowhere to go. You can't climb up out of it. It's just sheer rock, really beautiful rock, but there's one way in and there's kind of one way out, so you kind of have to walk all the way through, or else there's not really a good way to get out of there.
They're not formed by the wind?
I think it's water. I might be wrong with that, but
I think it's wind.
Beautiful regardless. So
we'll look that up.
We'll fact check that later and put it on YouTube. Just check out that YouTube channel and see who's right.
Regardless of whether it's water or wind, if it does rain, they get a lot of flash floods in the desert, and you will die.
Yeah.
If you're in a slot canyon and it rains a lot, there's no way out. So make sure you check out that weather. But there's a ton of other slot canyons in the area. A lot north of Lake Powell that we are interested in visiting. We haven't been to yet, but
the area is really cool.
It's completely iconic, and there's Upper Antelope Canyon and Lower Antelope Canyon, and we have gone to Lower twice. Upper is a little wider, I think.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to get in. I don't think you need to take stairs really to get into it.
I don't think so.
And there's beautiful sun rays that come down through it, and it's really nice.
Yeah,
but
that's where you'll see those iconic photos with the beautiful sunbeams that come in.
Yep.
And but if you want to go, make sure you book your tour ahead of time because you have to go with a guided tour since it's on Navajo land, and go in the off season. It's
super
much less crowded.
Super worth it. Insanely beautiful. Definitely worth the price, but don't expect to be there by yourself. It's going to be pretty busy.
Yeah.
So, and then after our time in Page, I think we spent 2 nights there. We headed to Antelope Canyon. Monument Valley, sorry. I'm having a hard time today. So Monument Valley is further into Arizona.
Utah.
It's actually on the Utah-Arizona border, but it is further east in the state. This area has been used for a lot of westerns, but I think the most famous movie that it's been in it was in Forrest Gump. If you know the scene where he runs across the U.S. a bunch of times and then he finally gets tired and stops, that's the spot that he stops and decides he wants to go home. So it's just a long road with these monuments or giant rock formations all over the area.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it in every western.
Yeah, but that was probably, how far was the drive? Maybe like 3.5 hours or something like that. Page.
You have to. It's a destination itself. Like there's nothing around it.
Middle of nowhere.
You can't. There's nothing to see on the way. There's nothing past it. So like you have to make a conscious decision that okay, we're going to Monument Valley.
Yep.
You can't just like really stop there on the way anywhere else because it's so far out of the way.
That was a really neat spot. We camped. You can go to the Monument Valley Tribal Park and Visitor Center. And they have campsites. They have a hotel that's right there also, which is right next to the most iconic monuments. There's also a loop road that you have to go in. There's a fee to access for the day and to camp, but you're camping right by these big, giant monoliths that are just
cool.
Like it was probably one of the more beautiful campsites I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, the loop road is dirt, so be aware of that.
Yeah,
we did it in a Toyota
Matrix. Yeah, so you don't need to have a 4-wheel drive or anything like that. But it is dirt, so it's very slow going. We didn't drive the whole thing, but it was nice to kind of go down there. And
it's really cool. You can take really cool photos. Yeah. And the campground we stayed at did not. It was very rustic. It didn't have even a picnic table, so you just set up your tent. There's no table, no fire pit, no anything like that. Although it did have a shower.
There's a little
at the bathroom. There was a shower.
Yep, that was
which
was
was
nice.
Cool.
And there was a restaurant right there next to the hotel. We didn't end up eating there because they had reserved a certain time slot for just hotel guests. So we went to another resort that was nearby and had dinner. And I think we had.
Yeah, there's Goldings, which is one of the bigger areas. Like it's a hotel and everything too. You can stay on the other side. And we had Navajo tacos.
Yep.
Yeah, which are so good. If you've never had Indian fry, it's Indian fry bread. They're so good, and you can't really find it anywhere else than the Southwest United States.
No. There's also a lot of turquoise that you can buy there in that area. So it's a good culture.
It's really cool.
Really
I
neat.
love it there.
Yeah, it's always nice to support the Navajo Nation too.
Yes.
So.
But that was really cool. So there are places to stay if you don't want to camp. Definitely a couple hotels there. Like I said, it's all in Navajo Nation. But it is a destination in its own right. So there's nothing else to see around it. So after that, where did we go after that?
We turned around and we headed back west. And our destination that day was to go to Sedona, which was a super long drive in itself. But we made the drive even longer by doing a detour to the Grand Canyon.
We're like that.
Yeah. So you're going to drive right by the Grand Canyon, and we had a really big debate of whether we should go or not, because we've both been to the Grand Canyon a couple times, and it's really beautiful, but there's not a lot to do at the Grand Canyon unless you want to go on a hike in the Grand Canyon. So you can kind of drive along the outside, you can have lunch and take a view, and it's really beautiful, and it's definitely worth seeing. But after after an hour or so of kind of looking over the edge, there's not really anything else to do there.
It was so crowded.
Yeah, super crowded, super hot, but we went anyways.
I don't remember it being like that when I was younger. They implemented a shuttle thing there too, so you can't really drive around the whole thing. But anyway, so we just drove through, and then we went down through Flagstaff and further south to Sedona, which is such a cool town. If you've never been there before, highly recommended. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's
really, really cool.
My favorite town in Arizona, for sure. So it's there's a bunch of vortex areas there, and I don't really know too much about that. If you're into energies and crystals, comment and tell me why Sedona is so great. But it's kind of turned Sedona into this mix of very outdoorsy, kind of off-road, mountain biking, Jeep truck kind of place, but also a very like spiritual, like healing meditation kind of place. So it's a really unique blend of
there's
those
a lot
two
of
things in town.
A lot of woo-woo stuff that made my dad go like, oh, so many hippies here. There's a lot of like crystal shops and psychics and stuff like that. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But the vortexes are like, and that's what they say. It's not vortices, it's vortexes in Sedona. So just in case you're gonna try to correct my grammar, they're like these areas in Sedona that have this like particular energy, I guess. I mean, did we go to one?
We went to a couple and we tried to meditate and kind of do what you're supposed to do. I didn't feel anything.
Maybe we need
special.
to go with more open minds. Or a lot of cute places to eat, cute places to stay, beautiful scenery. Like,
great hikes.
Oh, it's so gorgeous.
We have been 2 times, I think.
Yeah.
And we haven't done Devil's Bridge yet, which I'm gonna go back there and do that soon because that hike looks amazing.
Yeah, we decided not to do any hiking this time because it was so hot.
Cathedral Peak is another place that we hiked.
It's a good hike, Cathedral Peak, but if you're gonna go in the summer, go very early in the morning, or don't go in the summer because it's hot, like upper 100s Fahrenheit, so like 40 Celsius. It's very, very hot.
So after Sedona, we headed back up to Flagstaff, and then we started our drive back to Los Angeles. The road to LA from Flagstaff goes along Route 40, which is the road that replaced historic Route 66. So that's really cool because you can see a lot of the Route 66 nostalgia without having to drive the whole thing. So what we did was we drove Route 40 whenever we saw a town that looked really cool and a marker for historic Route 66. We'd get off, explore the town a little bit, and then get back on Route 40 to do a few more miles on that.
Yeah, there were a couple towns in Arizona that were really cool that like took the Route 66 thing and just ran with it.
Yeah, Williams, Arizona was the one place
Williams
that we stopped.
Was a really cool one.
And that was really neat.
There was another smaller one that we went through that had a couple of cool things, but I don't remember the name of that one.
Yep, so if you're thinking about doing Route 66, that's the way to do it. Just hit Route 40 and get to the town, get off, and do whatever you want to see all the nostalgia and all the old buildings, and then get back on Route 40 and keep going.
Yeah.
It'll save you a lot of time and probably a few flat tires.
Yeah, it's not very well kept.
Not anymore.
But we got to the end of Arizona, crossed over just the little bottom tip of Nevada because we were going to stay in Laughlin. But right before the border, there's this tiny little town on Route 66 called Oatman, which I wanted to take him to. It's not that far outside of Laughlin, but it's this little mining town. The Route 66 runs right through. So they have all this, like, it's authentic, but they have all this kitschy stuff, like
you can go
gunfights.
Yeah, the mine tour. And
yeah, like the old jail. And it's like a Wild West town. It's cool.
Yeah, so it's a good mix. It's not a full. It's still a town that people live in, and it's not completely kitschy. Like there's still buildings and hotels that are still operating that have been the same way for 100 years.
That I'm sure are haunted.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also like fun for kids. You know, it's very Wild West. And when we went, it was later in the day, so a lot of stuff was closed. But one of the most unique things about Oatman is that I guess when the miners came, they had all these little burros, like the donkeys, little tiny donkeys. And when the mines dried up, they just set these little burro donkeys or whatever. They just set them free. They were just like, okay.
Yep.
And they really prospered in the area. So there's like all these little
just
cute
wild donkeys just roaming the streets and like.
And they're like in the hills and stuff, but they come into the town and walk along the streets and like go in the shops and stuff.
Yeah, I mean they'll come right up to your car and like lick your window and expecting some food.
Stick their heads in.
They own the town. I mean the people don't really own the town. It's the burros that own the town.
Yeah, they're so cute.
Yeah, so and you know sometimes they'll just be in the middle of the street and they won't move for your car and it's you know.
Yeah, you just wait.
Yeah, but all the little shops sell like you know some food that you can feed to the burros and stuff like that. But they're kind of a nuisance and it's pretty funny. It's a unique town.
Yes, Oatman, Arizona. If you're ever in the Laughlin area, that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere too. But then we went to Laughlin, which is on the Colorado River. It's far southern Nevada, like even further south than Las Vegas. So they have gambling there, and all the casinos are on the river. And across, it's like right on the border. So across the river is Arizona. But it's very cheesy and
yeah, it's like a tiny little like older rundown version of Vegas.
Yeah, very rundown. It's like what Reno is to Vegas is what like Laughlin is to Reno.
Yeah. So it's
like the
funny.
Hotel rooms are $17 a night.
And that's why we went there. We were like, the drive back's going to be too far. We've already been driving, you know, all the way from Arizona, so get a $17 hotel room and hit a buffet or something like that.
Yeah, you know, like in a casino, it's $17.
Yeah, so it's an experience in itself, but
it's fun.
Great spot to stop on a road trip, especially after you've been like driving and camping for 10 days and you just need a cheap hotel room and
it's
good air conditioning.
A good budget stop for sure.
So that was really cool. We actually got into a little fender bender right when we pulled into Laughlin. You remember that? Yep. And I just got a new car, and this was our first big road trip with it. And a car just backed into me, or hit me in the back at a stoplight. And there wasn't any damage or anything like that. The car was fine.
The guy was driving without a license.
I don't know.
Could have been real bad for him.
Yeah, I don't know.
We were nice.
I don't know what the whole deal with that was, but there wasn't any damage to the car, so we didn't really care too much about it. But yeah, and then we kind of motored our way back to Los Angeles. So.
Yeah, it's about 5 hours. It's about the same drive from back to LA as it is from Vegas. It's just different way.
Yep.
So yeah, it was super fun. There's so much more to explore. We only had the 10 days and we did a ton of stuff.
Yeah, it was a great 10-day road trip.
You could spend weeks. Like, you could spend a month, 2 months exploring just southern Utah. It's so incredible.
Yeah, we're planning a trip right now to go back and explore some more of Utah. Yeah, well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this talk. We like to end these with just some advice if you're planning on doing a trip like this in the future. So I would say be aware of what time of year you go. Probably June and July, it's going to be really hot. We missed out on some hikes and some other things that we would have really liked to do just because it was way too hot. So maybe avoid going in peak summer.
Yeah, late fall would probably be a good time because it actually does get cold in these areas and it does snow.
Yeah. Which would be cool to see in itself, but I think, you know, in that spring and fall time is really the sweet spot when you want to do this road trip.
And it'll be less crowded too.
Yep. National parks are amazing. Sedona is a great spot. Monument Valley is really cool if you want to see that specific view, but it's really far out of the way, so probably that's not going to be for everybody to make that trip.
Yeah, and if you want to do any big hikes, you're going to want to check out permits, because those can be a little difficult to come by.
Yep.
Well, if you're watching this on live, that will be it for us. And if you're watching this on YouTube and you like this video, we would really appreciate a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, what the heck are you waiting for? Go ahead and subscribe below so you don't miss our travel chats, our travel vlogs, our travel tips, all kinds of travel stuff. So thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye!